What if I told you some of the greatest teams in World Cup history never won the World Cup? Not because they were weak, not because they were boring, not because they were forgotten, but because football as a sport can be absolutely cruel at times. Think about Hungary 1954, Netherlands 1974, Brazil 1982. तीन टीमें, तीन फुटबॉलिंग रेवोल्यूशन और तीन स्टोरीज जहां दुनिया ने देखा और कहा वाह, फुटबॉल तो ऐसे भी खेला जा सकता है, बट ट्रॉफी नो, देयर वाज नो ट्रॉफी फॉर देम। बिकॉज वर्ल्ड कप हिस्ट्री सिर्फ विनर्स की कहानी नहीं होती, ये उन गोस्ट्स की भी कहानी है जो ट्रॉफी कभी जीत नहीं पाए और फुटबॉल को हमेशा के लिए चेंज करके गए। वेलकम टू पीएन प्लेबुक और ये है वर्ल्ड कप गॉड्स, गोस्ट्स एंड ग्लोरी। आज हम बात करेंगे फुटबॉल के लिए जिसे हम इंग्लिश में कहते हैं द मोस्ट ब्यूटिफुल लाई। फुटबॉल में एक ब्यूटीफुल लाई है कि बेस्ट टीम ऑलवेज विंस, कि जो सबसे अच्छा खेलता है ट्रॉफी उसी को मिलती है। ब्यूटी, करेज, इंटेलिजेंस, इमेजिनेशन, ये सब फुटबॉल टर्म्स हैं जो इवेंचुअली लोगों को रिवॉर्ड करती हैं। बट वर्ल्ड कप इसका एकदम उल्टा है। वर्ल्ड कप कहता है नॉट ऑलवेज, समटाइम्स बेस्ट टीम लूजेस, समटाइम्स मोस्ट ब्यूटिफुल फुटबॉल गेट्स पनिश्ड, समटाइम्स जो टीम फ्यूचर इन्वेंट करती है वही टीम फाइनल विसल के बाद साइलेंस में खड़ी रह जाती है। और वो साइलेंस नॉर्मल नहीं होता, वो साइलेंस होता है एक हार्ट ब्रेक का। जब एक एवरेज टीम लूज करती है पीपल मूव ऑन, जब एक ग्रेट टीम लूज करती है फुटबॉल उसे कभी भूलता ही नहीं। 1954 वर्ल्ड कप बोलो, जर्मनी चैंपियन थी, बट एक किसी फुटबॉल रोमांटिक को पूछो वो बोलेंगे हंगरी का वर्ल्ड कप था। 1974 में अगर आप मुझसे पूछें विनर कौन है एज अ एविड क्विजर, मैं कहूंगा वेस्ट जर्मनी चैंपियन बनी थी, बट फुटबॉल फिलोसोफर्स नेदरलैंड्स को हमेशा याद रखेंगे। 1982 वर्ल्ड कप में इटली चैंपियन बनी, बट फुटबॉल पोएट्स बोलेंगे ब्राजील का वर्ल्ड कप था वो। बट ऐसा क्यों? बिकॉज सम टीम्स आर बिगर देन रिजल्ट्स। They just don't chase trophies, they chase imagination. उन्हें देख के लगता है फुटबॉल सिर्फ एक स्पोर्ट नहीं, it is science, it is rhythm, it is a rebellion, more importantly, it is an art. And that is why their losses hurt very differently. Because they were not just teams, they were ideas. And when an idea loses, it becomes a ghost. अब आते हैं एक ऐसी टीम के बारे में बात करने जिसे लोग कहते हैं द टीम वॉज जस्ट बॉर्न टू अर्ली इन द वर्ल्ड ऑफ मॉडर्न फुटबॉल। हंगरी 1954। लेट्स स्टार्ट विथ 1950s, a time before modern pressing, before false nine became fashionable, before positional play became YouTube content, before Pep Guardiola, before tactical boards became Instagram reels, before football had the language to explain what Hungary were doing, they were called as the magical Magyars. Frank Puskás, Sandor Kossis, Joseph Bosic, एज एन एविड क्विज मास्टर, ये सब आपको नाम याद होंगे। बट ये टीम सिर्फ स्ट्रांग नहीं थी, ये टीम डेंजरस थी, ये टीम फ्यूचर से आई हुई लगती थी। एट अ टाइम वेयर फुटबॉल वॉज वेरी रिजिड, Hungary were fluid. Players did not stay fixed. Forwards dropped deep, midfielders attacked space, defenders played with confidence. Positions were not cages, they were starting points. आज हम बोलते हैं फॉल्स नाइन, बोलते हैं ओवरलैप करता है प्लेयर, रोटेट होता है, पोजिशनल प्ले होता है। हंगरी ये सब 1950s में कर रही थी, विदाउट हैशटैग, विदाउट टैक्टिकल थ्रेड्स, कोई फैंसी ग्राफिक्स नहीं, कोई डेटा एनालिटिक्स नहीं। और आते हैं 1953 में वेम्बली, इंग्लैंड वर्सेस हंगरी। माना जाता है या एक रिकॉर्ड हुआ करता था, इंग्लैंड हैड नेवर लॉस्ट अ होम गेम टू अ नॉन ब्रिटिश टीम। वेम्बली कोई स्टेडियम नहीं था, वो एक फुटबॉल का स्टेटमेंट था, एक ऐसा स्टेडियम था जहां इंग्लैंड नहीं हारती, बाकी सब हार जाएंगे। और इंग्लिश फुटबॉल कहते थे दिस इज आवर होम, एंड हंगरी वॉकड इन एंड ब्रोक द हाउस। क्योंकि मैच का रिजल्ट मैं बोलूं तो आप हंसोगे, इंग्लैंड 3, हंगरी 6-3 at Wembley. This was not some football result. In fact, the English media called it a tennis score. This was football's old world getting slapped by the future. Hungary showed the world that tradition was not enough. Technique could beat power, movement could beat marking, intelligence could beat arrogance. And by the 1954 World Cup, Hungary were not just favorites, they were the team everyone feared. They beat West Germany 8-3, they beat South Korea 9-0. Imagine beating a team 8-3 in a World Cup and then meeting the same team again in the final. This is not a warning sign, that feels like destiny. And then came the final, Hungary versus West Germany. Hungary went 2-0 up inside 8 or 9 minutes. 2-0. At that point, most of the skeptics said, that's it, that's over. The World Cup is going to Hungary. But Puskás and Hungary were about to complete football's perfect story. The best team in the world, about to become world champions. But you see, football does not always have perfect stories. West Germany came back 2-1, then 2-2. The pitch got heavy as the rain started pouring. Hungary pushed, attacked, hit the post 4 times. Hungary had 6 or 7 chances, but the ball just didn't want to go at the back of the net. And guess what? West Germany scored. 3-2. Final whistle. West Germany were world champions. Hungary were not. For anyone who likes to do a lot of quizzes and wants to understand history, this match later became known as the Miracle of Bern. But for Hungary, it was not a miracle. It was a wound, because the greatest team of that era never lifted the World Cup. And that is the first type of giant who never wins, the team born too early. Hungary were playing tomorrow's football in yesterday's world. They were not a team, they were a prophecy. But prophecy does not always get a trophy. Sometimes football says, you were right, but you were too soon. Then comes the next team, Netherlands 1974. The team that won the future. Netherlands, orange shirt, long hair, smoke in their mouth, confidence, arrogance, art. And one man at the center of it all, Johan Cruyff. If Hungary showed football the future, Netherlands gave that future a philosophy called as total football. A system where players were not prisoners of positions. Defenders could attack, attackers could defend, midfielders could rotate. The pitch became a living chessboard. Every player seemed to know what his role was, and everyone else's role too. And Johan Cruyff was not just a footballer. He was a football idea in a human form. He moved like a forward, thought like a midfielder, controlled space like a manager. He was the player and the playbook. Netherlands arrived at the 1974 World Cup looking very different. They did not just beat teams, they made teams feel outdated. They humiliated them. They pressed, they rotated, they manipulated space. They attacked with an arrogance. They defended with intelligence. At one point of time, the media said, hand over them the World Cup, we'll play for the third spot. Because Argentina were beaten 4-0, Brazil were beaten 2-0. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, Brazil were beaten 2-0 in an era where there was no possession stats. The reports say that Netherlands controlled the possession 94% of the match. And football looked at Netherlands and said, you are not normal. This was not just a team trying to win the World Cup. This was a team trying to explain the future. And guess what? Then came the final. Netherlands versus West Germany. And the final started in the most Dutch way possible. Germany did not even touch the ball. Netherlands passed and passed, moved around. Cruyff carried the ball. Penalty. Johan Neeskens scores 1-0 Netherlands. Even before Germany had even touched the bloody ball, think about it. World Cup final, opponent has not touched the ball and you're already 1-0 up. That was not a goal, that was a statement. It was Netherlands saying, we are not here to play. We are here to win and we are here to show you what this game football means. But World Cup finals are dangerous places for statements. Germany came back. Paul Breitner's famous penalty 1-1, and then the Der Bomber, Judd Muir, scored 2-1. Netherlands pushed, tried, Germany survived, but the final whistle just blew. West Germany were champions, heartbreak for Netherlands. But here is a strange thing, right? People still talk about the Netherlands 1974 like they won something bigger. Because they did. They did not win the trophy, they won the future. Total football then traveled to Ajax, to Barcelona, to Spain, to Guardiola, to modern football. You can check my video on Johan Cruyff and Total Football, which is linked upstairs. Every time you see a center back step into midfield, every time a fullback inverts, every time a forward drops deep to create space, somewhere the ghost of 1974 of Netherlands is still alive. And that is the second type of giant who never wins. The team that loses the final but wins the future. Netherlands did not lift the World Cup, but they changed what football wanted to become. And sometimes that legacy is heavier than gold. Now comes the third part of the story. 1982 Brazil, the day beauty died. This is the most painful one. Brazil 1982, for many football lovers, this is the ultimate ghost team. Not because they were the most efficient, not because they were the most ruthless, because they played football like music. Falcao, Socrates, Zico, Eder, Cerezo, Junior. This was Brazil, and this was not as a team Brazil. This was a mood, this was a vibe, as an emotion, as a festival, as a belief that football had a duty to be beautiful. Brazil 1982 did not play like they were calculating. They were played like they were expressing their moods. One touch passes, back heels, long range shots, movement, confidence, rhythm, joy. ऐसा लगता था जैसे फुटबॉल पिच नहीं है, कोई स्टेज है और ये सब एक्टर है और ब्राजील उसमें परफॉर्म कर रही है. They beat Soviet Union, they beat New Zealand, they beat Scotland, then they beat their arch rivals Argentina. And with every match, the world fell deeper in love. Because this was not just winning, this was seduction. Brazil made people remember why they loved football in the first place. Because they just played the game like they play in the beaches. Irony is, World Cup does not ask this question. Who made people fall in love? World Cup asks, who survives? And then came Italy. Brazil versus Italy, 1982. One of the most iconic games in the history of World Cup. Paulo Rossi scored. Italy were 1-0 up. Brazil came back 1-1. Rossi scored again 2-1. And then Brazil came back 2-2. And here is a key detail. At 2-2, everyone looked into Brazil and they said they are going to win because they did not need to win. They only needed not to lose. And this is where tournament football asks the hardest question. Can you betray your identity for survival? Can your beauty become a little practical? Can art become little cold? Can Brazil stop being Brazil just for 4-5 minutes? Answer was no. Brazil kept attacking, kept expressing, kept believing in their football. They did not kill the game. They did not park the bus. They did not choose fear. They chose themselves. And then, guess what? Paulo Rossi decides to say, you know what, I'll have the final say. Italy 3, Brazil 2, final whistle. Just like that, Brazil's hopes ended. The most beautiful team in the tournament was gone. And football lost something that day. Not because Italy were villains. They were not. Italy were brilliant. Rossi was clinical. Italy totally deserved their win. But Brazil's exit felt different. It felt like poetry losing to reality. It felt like art being punished by the scoreboard. It felt like beauty died that day. Because 1982's Brazil team showed us heaven and then disappeared before touching it. And that is the third type of giant who never wins. The team that refuses to stop being beautiful even when survival demands ugliness. In hindsight, I can say Brazil could have played safe. They could have protected 2-2. They could have compromised. But then they would not be Brazil of 1982. And maybe that is why we still love them. Because they lost the trophy but kept their soul. Remember, there is no cure for an amputated spirit. And Brazil didn't have one. Some teams win because they adapt. 1982's Brazil team became immortal because they refused to. And this led me to the question, why do beautiful teams lose? Well, I don't know. I mean, why does this happen so often? Why do teams like Hungary 1954, Netherlands 1974, Brazil 1982, or even the Belgium's golden generation, or Croatia for that matter of fact, why do they never win the World Cup? Because World Cups punish imperfection. In a league, you can have a bad day. You can lose one match, recover next week. But World Cup knockout football, one bad moment or a second late, your story is over. One deflection, one injury, one missed chance, one counter attack. That's it, you're done. Finished. The second reason can be beautiful teams carry double pressure. Normal teams are expected to win. Beautiful teams are expected to win beautifully. अगर वो विन करें बट अगली खेलें तो लोग कंप्लेन करेंगे. अगर वो ब्यूटीफुल खेलें और हार जाएं तो पीपल रोएंगे. Cruel burden, but it is the nature of football. The third reason what I think is identity can sometimes become a cage. For example, Hungary kept attacking. Netherlands kept making a statement. Brazil kept playing beautifully. The same identity that made them special also made them vulnerable. And that is the brutal truth. Tournament football often rewards the team that knows when to betray its own style, not always the team with purest ideas. The World Cup is not a beauty contest, it's a survival test. And sometimes the most beautiful teams fail because they are too honest for their own liking. And the story did not end in the past. Like I said, modern day football also has its ghost. Look at Belgium 2018. Kevin De Bruyne, Lukaku, Hazard, Courtois, Company, Jan van Trongen, Toby Alderweireld. For years, people called them the golden generation of football. And in 2018, they came close. They beat Brazil. Hazard danced through pressure. De Bruyne hit that beautiful strike. Lukaku became a counter-attacking transition monster. Belgium looked ready, but in the semi-final, France stopped them. 1-0, a set piece, fine margins. And suddenly the golden generation became a golden question. What if? Right? Then came Croatia 2018. Small nation carrying a massive dream. You think about players like Mandzukic, Perisic, Rakitic, Modric, Subasic. They fought through extra time, they survived penalties, they beat England in the semi-final and reached the World Cup final. Because for Croatia, this was not just football, it was a national emotion. But France were too strong. Croatia lost 4-2. Still, people remember that team with love because 2018 Belgium were promise, Croatia 2018 were heart. Neither won. Both made the world believe that impossible was close, and sometimes that is enough to become a ghost. So, what do we do with these teams? Do we call them failures? Yes, technically. Emotionally, personally, for me, never. Hungary 1954 didn't win the World Cup, but they showed football the future. 1974 Netherlands did not win the World Cup, but they gave football a philosophy and idea which is carried for years. But they gave football beauty which people still mourn. 1982 Brazil did not win the World Cup, and that is why football history is sometimes not just a list of winners. It is a museum of feelings. Trophies tell us who won, but memory tell us who mattered. And sometimes memory is more powerful than medals. You know, let me put it this way. Who won the World Cup in 1954? West Germany. But who were magical? Hungary. Who won the World Cup in 1974? West Germany again. But who changed football? Netherlands. Who won the World Cup in 1982? Italy. But who made it beautiful? Brazil. That is the power of ghosts. They don't lift trophies, but they refuse to disappear from your head. Maybe the greatest tragedy in football is not losing. Maybe the greatest tragedy is being unforgetful without being crowned. Because these teams were not ordinary losers. Netherlands were a revolution, Brazil were poetry, Belgium were promise, Croatia were a heart, Hungary was a prophecy. None of them became world champions because all of them became something else. Myth. Because trophies create champions, heartbreak creates legends, and unfinished stories stay with us longer. They hurt more, they haunt more, they live longer. The winner gets the cup, but the ghosts get the imagination. And maybe that is why we still talk about them. They remind us that football is not only about who finishes first, it is about who makes us feel, who makes us dream, who makes us believe the game can be more beautiful than the result. So, yes, some teams become gods by winning. Some teams become ghosts. They showed us heaven and they never reached it. I mean, if you think about it, none of these teams deserve to lose. But that's it. Because next we look at the most brutal knockouts in World Cup history. The matches where one kick, one mistake, 1 second destroyed an entire nation's dream. Until then, this is PN Playbook, where football is more than scores. It is strategy, it is psychology, it is history, and sometimes it is mythology. Like the channel, subscribe the channel, and share this video with all your friends. Thank you for watching another episode.